All right, so for this video, I'm just going to show you a little bit of the heart. This is a sheep's heart. So what we first want to look at is the outside of this heart. And if we look at the color difference, we can see that we have some fat that's surrounding this heart. Everybody's heart has some fat. Too much fat is not good either. And then you have your muscle, your cardiac muscle, which for inside of the heart, we call it the myocardium, right? That is the actual muscle layer. The other things we want to look at is we have our coronary arteries and our main blood vessels that would run through some of these grooves. You can kind of see them there. We have the main one along the back, right? And this is where we have like bypass surgery. If some of those coronary arteries get blocked, you can have double, triple bypass, or just a single bypass surgery. And then at the top, all of your blood vessels are coming out through the top. Okay, and some of them kind of join together where you have your superior and inferior vena cavas coming in. And the other thing to recognize is that we have an apex here on the heart, which is the tip. And on a human, the apex points towards the left hip. Now, the heart lies pretty much right in the center of your body, but it angles towards the left hip. So it'd be more like this form, okay? So we know that we're looking at the right atrium here, right ventricles down here. We have the left atrium, left ventricle, right? And I've sliced this open, I've cut this open. So let's look at what the inside looks like. Okay, so we open this up like a clamshell. Okay, here's your right side. And it's not like the pictures that we see in books and stuff like that. It looks a little more crammed together. That's what it looks like to me. And your atriums are actually really, really small. This would be your atrium, your right atrium. Your right ventricle is down in here, this opening down in here. This would be your left atrium up here, kind of small, and your left ventricle. Now, the one thing I want you to realize is the thickness of the walls. So notice how thick this myocardium is compared to the right side or the right ventricle. And the reason for that is because the right ventricle only has to pump blood to your lungs, which are surrounding your heart. But your left ventricle has to pump blood out through your aorta, which is through there. It's this massive blood vessel up at the top that starts to, branch off everywhere. But the left ventricle has to pump it out through the aorta and then circulate that out throughout the entire body. So that's the reason why that is so much thicker, okay? We can also see our valves. You can see those, what we call them, the heartstrings, right? Those are what hold our valves in place. Now they've obviously been cut. We have part of it up here. We have part of it down here, but that would be a full 360 degrees to make that enclosure, separating out your atrium and your ventricles, or your aortic valve or your pulmonary valves, right? So if we look here, let's see if we can find one of your, give me 1 second. Just going to try to sneak this through. Okay, so here, what we're looking at there, that's coming into your right atrium. So that's going to be one of your vena cavas, superior, inferior vena cavas, lead in to your right atrium, goes through your tricuspid valve into your right ventricle. That then turns and goes upwards and goes out through, there it is, your pulmonary artery. And then goes, if you can see how that kind of lines up. Right, by the way, right? So we have our right ventricle, and it goes out through our pulmonary artery. Then it's going to come back in. Okay, since this was cut already, it's a little bit of a struggle, but here, pulmonary vein, we have an opening there. Pulmonary vein would lead it back into our left atrium, down through our bicuspid or mitral valve that then goes into our left ventricle, and that turns back up and goes out through this massive aorta at the top. Okay, now these blood vessels at the top, they're not really separated by that much. You can see how they're all kind of all bunched together. This is the aorta that starts to branch right at the top before it starts to arch up and around the back of the heart. But you have a bunch of them that are really, really close together. But if we were to have this completely whole and be able to stick a microscope down through there, you would see where they kind of lead to, which would be really interesting to do. So that's about it. We have our coronary arteries and main blood vessels. You have your apex, and then you have your right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle. That's going to go out, and everything goes up through the top of the heart. That's going to go out through your pulmonary artery. A is for away. Go to the lungs. It's going to come back through your pulmonary vein into your left atrium, down through your bicuspid or mitral valve, into your left ventricle. Lots of myocardium here because of the amount of force that has to be pushed out through that aorta.